Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Fraternity Foodie. This is Mike Eilon with Greek University. As you know, we call these new interview segments Fraternity Foodie because there is nothing like food to bring people together. So we're going to continue to tackle some of the really tough conversations in these interviews, and we're also going to get the inside scoop on where our guests like to eat and where we can go to get it. So stay tuned to the end of the interview to get that. So today we have a special treat for us. We have Tricia Benitez. She is a speaker for Greek University on topics like alcohol and drug addictions, also her brand new talk on healthy relationships. I can't wait to talk to her a little bit more about that. So Tricia, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mike, good morning. Thank you.
Good morning, good morning. So let's chat a little bit. Obviously, I know you pretty well, but our audience, maybe they don't know you yet. So let's talk a little bit. Let's start with your childhood. I think that's a good place to start. Your father, he suffered from alcoholism. I know your mother, she had used cocaine on several occasions, and you also lost your brother to a drug overdose back in 2002. And I know that all of this has to be really, really difficult on you, but you never made any of these things an excuse in your life. You remain persistent in life despite all of these difficult experiences that you've been through. So given everything that's happened in terms of your childhood, how has all of these experiences shaped you as a person?
Well, right out of the gate, we're just going to hit it with like the most loaded question possible.
Totally.
Wow. You know, everybody's path in life is very different, right? And the only thing that I've kind of mastered, or have mastered isn't probably the right word, that I've been able to utilize is taking the things that I've experienced at such a young age and kind of quickly, my startup in life. I tried to do my very best to not allow them to hinder who I was or to stop me from becoming the person that I am today. And I know for a fact that they've definitely, God, they played their part in making, guiding me into making some pretty not so great decisions at times. But I mean, we live and learn. And, my dad was not a bad person. He just wasn't that healthy. And, thankfully I was kind of guided away from all of that at a very young age. So it was kind of a blessing in disguise,
Mm-hmm.
My sister played a huge part in helping me get away from all of that. And had she not been there to help me when no one else would, I think things would be very, very different for me. And I like to tell people, all over, especially when I talk to a group of students, is that each and every one of us, we're all one very small decision away from a very different life, regardless of what you may think that is. And it's very true, because there are so many times that I could have made just one slight decision, left or right, and I wouldn't be here today. So, I don't like to look back at my childhood and use it as a crutch, because that's kind of the easy thing to do, is say, oh, poor pitiful me, because X, Y, and Z happened. That is the reason I'm doing this today. Instead of using it and saying, well, I have been through that, but I don't live in the past. I have my life to look forward to, and I have things to do. And being, poor pitiful me just doesn't work for me. So I
Yeah, I
guess
like
that's
that. I
the
like
best
that
way I could
attitude.
wrap that one up.
Yeah, I mean, that's the best attitude to have. I know a lot of people will say things like, and I was talking about this in the last interview at Fraternity Foodie. We were talking about how people say, well, why do all these bad things happen to me? But really what we should be asking is, why do these things happen for me, right? What can we learn through these experiences to help us and maybe help other people along the way? So I
Right.
think that's really, really powerful. Now, I remember hearing you speak at Cumberland University in Tennessee, and all the students in the crowd, they all seemed to want to give you a big hug and tell you their life story after you were so vulnerable with them on stage. So, how did that moment feel for you?
You can't really put a word on that moment, because when people who don't know you authentically will come up to you and completely embrace you, that to me is like you're loving them back to life. If anybody follows me on social media, they know that I post that little hashtag a lot, like love someone back to life, love you more. I'm very big on that. And these students that they don't know who I am. They just saw me on stage for, I think, what, 30 minutes, not long at all. And the outpouring of tears and gratitude that these young adults had was so moving. And you just, you cannot put words onto that, because it's real, it's raw. It was real life, real time, people connecting and becoming just, we kind of all of us took our masks off, right? And by doing that, I wasn't that girl on stage, and they weren't just orientation students. They were individual human beings. And it was really moving that by me just bearing it all and showing, some not so impressive parts of who I am, really opened them up too. And it really also told me that what I'm doing and the way I'm going about doing certain things in life is actually the right way. Because when you get a response like that, you know, there's nothing greater than that in the world. So
Yeah,
that was the
I
most
noticed that
moving
right
thing I
away.
think I've experienced in a long, long time.
Yeah, I noticed that right away about you, that you have this unique ability to connect with people almost immediately. And I think that's one trait that I really respect, that you have that ability. Not everyone has that, but you can do that almost immediately, especially when you make yourself vulnerable and you talk about some of these really, really powerful things that have happened in your life. I just think it's amazing. And I noticed that almost right away. The other interesting thing about you is that you were actually living in New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina, and I know that you lost everything in that storm. So tell our audience, what was New Orleans like during that particular time?
Well, fortunately, I did get out a day or two early, and I didn't experience the storm. And being from New Orleans, a lot of people there, still, their thoughts are, oh, it's just another hurricane, no big deal. It's one of these things you're just kind of desensitized to. But the reality is this was the mother lode, and it wasn't necessarily the storm that was such a problem. It was the aftermath and the levees breaking and the devastation that just unfolded. It was a third world country, and that's putting it lightly. So many people who stayed died, lost their pets, lost their homes. I had recently relocated to a nice little apartment, um, right there in Metairie. And my sister and her husband helped me get into this place. We put our elbow grease into it. We worked our butts off, because the person that lived there prior, trashed the place. So we, you know, did the carpet and sheetrock, and well, mostly my brother-in-law did. We helped, but mostly he did the heavy lifting on that. And they were in a position that they were able to let me have. They more likely let Katrina have. Most of all of their furnishings, like beds and armoires and things like that, that just to get a place to look like a place. I had clothing, um, but Katrina held nothing back. And to go back to this cute little apartment that I was so excited to have, and just everything was going on that right path, that track, that one track we have in our mind, that this is the way life should go, and this is our plan. And if our plan doesn't work, then, oh, people's worlds fall apart, right? Well, We came back and to see all of their stuff that was in my place that they had just basically given to me, just ruined. Most to all of my clothing and stuff that I did have also ruined. And again, this is one of those situations that it took me a little while to work through, because that's a very emotional, life event to go through. And if anybody who sees this hasn't experienced a natural disaster, count your blessings, because I wouldn't wish that on anybody. It's catastrophic to sit there and just watch as you're miles and miles away of just you're watching it just barrel down, and for a fact there's no coming back from that. And you know what I walked away from that was, I value people and connections now. I don't place much value on a tangible item like a car or a purse or articles of clothing or, plates or stuff. I don't care about stuff anymore. It's like, some people look at it differently. Some people go and collect more and more and more stuff because they've lost everything, and I get it. But just for me personally, I'd rather collect memories and experiences than a tangible item. I made a post one time. I said, I'd rather die tomorrow with $1 million worth of experiences rather than $1 million in the bank. And that's still very true for who I am.
Very cool. Some important lessons there, I think, for a lot of people out there.
Yeah.
The other amazing thing about you, Trish, is that you've helped over 1,500 people get into treatment so that way they can work through their various forms of addiction. What were some of the most difficult situations that you've encountered in doing that? And maybe what's one of the most rewarding situations that you've been through in that process?
Well, you know, sadly enough, there's more sadness than there is happy. And there's not one specific situation that was the most sad, but the most sad problem or barrier that you would constantly run into is having that person on the other end of the phone, and you can hear in their voice that they have no hope left. When you know that you have the ability to help them, on any kind of level, whether they have insurance or money or don't or what have you, it's like knowing that all you have to do is want it just a little bit, and I can help you figure that out. And to have somebody just, and even sit in front of you, just walk away because they're not ready, and understand that not everybody will survive this. It's hard, and people don't want to say that out loud, but that's the truth. um and that's a piece that will tug on you, because as somebody who has been affected by this in various forms, my biggest thing is, what else could I have done to help that person? What else could I have done? And it emotionally will hurt you. Keeping yourself on that hamster wheel of hell is what I like to call it, and that's literally what it is, because you can beat yourself up so much about it. um and like I mentioned, there's not that many positives, but the few positives that there are, they do stand out. And I was working with I'm not going to mention any names or locations, but I was working with a gentleman on a project, and he called me up and said, there's somebody that wants help. Are you willing to help them? I said, yes, I am. Well, this person wasn't necessarily all the way ready that day for help, and they went away, and we couldn't believe it. It was a harder case. um and I get a phone call a few months later, and it was that gentleman again. He said, you'll never believe who just walked in my office. And I said the name. Out of nowhere, it was like I knew who this was. And he goes, how did you know? I said, I don't know, but I did. I totally knew who this was. And he said, I think they want help today. Seriously. And I was like, cool, let me get all this stuff going again. And I did. Long story short, I got a picture texted to me about 10 months later. Hey, do you remember this girl? I said, well, of course I do. She wanted to thank the girl on the phone.
Mm, wow.
That right there. And to know that this person is happy and healthy and doing amazing things in life, you know, that's all I can ask for. And that's the one thing when I was like, what's the positive, right? Because there's so much negative around that topic. But anybody can sit there and dwell on all the negative. But you have to understand that with all of that, there is good that comes out of it. So you just have to be able to see it and embrace it when you do see it.
Yeah, that's a powerful thing. And any day that you're having a bad day, I think you need to think about that person who you helped and what a huge difference you made in her life. That's huge. That's absolutely huge. What is the cause of addiction? Why do people get addicted to such dangerous drugs?
Ooh, well, full disclosure, I do not have a PhD. I am not a doctor. So if anybody's listening to this, this is from personal experience and what I can speak to. Um, honestly, we that's such a loaded question, Mike. So good job with that. Um, most of the time when you're talking to somebody, did they wake up and go, you know what, today I'm gonna shove a needle in my arm and hopefully I die? No, it's usually not the case. It gets there for them, and that's because that's the reality of how desolate their life has become. And they feel nothing, they feel meaningless. But the cause of this, that's a variety of topics, right? So a lot of people want to say that kids are all scoring higher of the ACEs, which is adverse childhood experiences. So any child who's been sexually abused, who's been neglected, who's been in a family who, has, if they've witnessed their parents hitting each other, or they've been in situations where one parent is verbally abusive to the other, or just a variety of things. But those traumatic incidences a child can hold on to, and it can manifest later in life to something to where if they were to see somebody hit somebody, or they get hit, or they get sexually abused, or they get into a sexual relationship that's very unhealthy, it can manifest them back to that 4-year-old child. And that 4-year-old child was never healed. And that child is the one we're talking to. Um, but then once they start using to escape, to numb the pain, to just deal with life, we're not dealing with that person that we care about and love so much anymore. We're talking to the pill, the drink, the heroin. That's who we're talking to at that point. And people seem to forget that, because it's very easy to get angry and look at them and just, why won't you just do it? If you loved me, you would just stop. But that's literally the same thing as telling a diabetic, well, hey, you know, if you just love me, you just quit having diabetes, right? You just can't do that. Or if you really love me, you would quit having, heart problems. Nobody wants this. Um, but there's so many causes of it. And now we're in a society where, you know, women are powerhousing in the workforce, and I'm not against that at all. But having children be raised by other people who are not allowed to discipline them, who have embraced and enabled, this entitlement that so many have these days with, you know, give me, I need it now. And it's just a shame. It's very broken, the home lives are very broken, and that's just running amok to where women are raising sons who, you know, they're fatherless and vice versa, you know, and single parent homes are very challenging for a child to grow up and be very successful. And I'm not saying it's impossible, but it does make for a far more challenging situation for that single parent to take on such a task of having to provide and discipline and nurture and care for and also do self-care at the same time. And then we run into the next gambit of this pain situation where we get into a car accident and the first thing we do is go get a pain doctor prescribing us all this nonsense. Then after a sports injury or a car accident or something traumatic, now we're getting obscene amounts of, you know, narcotics written to us because I don't have to feel pain, right? My back hurts, I shouldn't feel any pain. And it's just being more aware of all of these things and actually saying these things out loud that people are scared to talk about would actually do more good than harm. So
Mm.
as far as the one-stop shop of addiction problems started here, sadly it's not that easy. You know, there's a laundry list of how this can get started, but there's also a laundry list of how it can get an end to it.
Mm.
But people have to start talking.
Yeah, I agree with you. We have to start talking more about it. As far as opioids are concerned, I think the doctors and the hospitals, I think they've realized that, this opioid crisis that we have today, a lot of it stems from the prescriptions that they were writing, and the fact that they did want their patients to feel zero pain. So I think they've realized that was a mistake. And now doctors are dialing that back and basically saying, you know what, you are going to feel a little bit of pain. You just went through surgery. That's pretty normal. We're going to try and treat, 80% of the pain, but you're going to feel something. But the whole thing is, we don't want you becoming addicted to some of these really dangerous drugs. And then, of course, an opioid, it eventually turns into meth or something else that's cheaper on the open market. So I think there's a lot of causes here and there's a lot of blame to go around. But it's interesting to talk to you about your perspective and what you're seeing, because you're really the front lines in terms of stopping a lot of this drug abuse and the opioid crisis. So let's assume for a moment that you are a sorority sister, you're living in the sorority house, or I'm a fraternity brother living in the fraternity house. How should we start a conversation with one of our sisters or one of our brothers in our house when we know that there's a problem in terms of an addiction? How do we start this conversation with this person?
My best thing is call it what it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, don't dance around it. Don't try to sugarcoat it. And don't badger someone or try to beat them up in the process, right? Like, don't make them out to feel like a bad person. But you definitely have to have that conversation, because if you don't have the conversation just candidly and lovingly, again, loving them back to life, I'm big on it, okay? There's a good way to go about it and there's a bad way. If everybody bands together and they they sit Sally in the middle of the circle and they just tell her all these awful things of who and what and where, you know, that needs to be done, but there's a way to go about it. You can explain like how these things have affected you and what you've seen from her or him and what you'll do, meaning how to navigate away from that in a healthy way. You know, do they
Mm-hmm.
need to go to counseling? Do we need to call their parents? Do they need to go into treatment? I mean, the reality is, if they go into treatment or even think about an option like that, I know a lot of people think, oh God, I can't go away for so long. And it's like a 30, 60, 90-day stint somewhere is a drop in the bucket of life. It's nothing. It's literally nothing. Truthfully, you know, it would be nice if treatment were mandatory to be a year and a half at minimum. You know, it's proven fact that when somebody starts using and habitually it becomes their brain has become chemically addicted to whatever it is they're using. The studies are showing now that it takes 2 years from the day of abstinence, 2 years to get your brain to start functioning. So people think that 30 days is real long, and it's like, actually it's not anything. It's not a drop in the bucket of what this is. It's essentially like college, and that's what I like to tell students in particularly, right, is that you're going to school for all this time, right? You've paid this money or gotten a scholarship, whatever. You've invested in yourself to gain knowledge, right? They go, yep. I went, cool. Now, just because you have the nice plaque on the wall, and just because you went through 4 years at a minimum, right? Usually,
Mm-hmm.
give or take, that doesn't guarantee you're going to get a job. Think about it. That doesn't guarantee that if you get that job, are you going to be good at it? No. It depends on if you take the tools that were given to you, drilled into you while you were in school, and apply them appropriately. It's the same way. So having all of our organizations speak their own same specific language within that organization is a really good way to start. So if they know they have an alcohol problem on campus, let's call it what it is and say it out loud all together now. Because the more times that we want to hush something or shush it and we don't have that problem here, yeah, you do. And, would you rather talk about the problem, or do you want to be another headline, losing another sister or fraternity brother, sorry guys, to this, and have to have the discussion of, well, your organization had to bury someone.
Yeah.
That's the reality. And I have to have these hard talks and topics, right? But if I don't, who does?
Yeah.
So
that's our obligation as fraternity brothers, as sorority sisters, to look out for one another. That house should be the safest place on campus because you have other eyes and ears on you at all times. A group of whatever it is, 50 people, 100 people, 200 people, whatever that number is, you have a bunch of eyes and ears on you at all times. So it should be the safest place for our children if the men and women in that house are truly living their values and looking out for one another. And I think that's so important, is that empathy for others. That's really what we have to focus on. I think so much, time is spent thinking about ourselves and what we need,
mm-hmm.
and making sure that we don't get into trouble because we were drinking alcohol and we're underage or whatever the situation is. But what about the empathy? What about caring for other people? Isn't that what's most important at the end of the day? Because we only have each other. That's it.
Yeah.
I want to talk about your other presentation too. So congratulations on your immediate success with your presentation on knowing your worth in relationships. And I know you're also going to be the speaker for Healthy Relationships Week that's coming up soon at IUPUI. So congratulations on that. What are some of the red flags that students should be on the lookout for in their own relationships? And that could be romantic relationships, it could be an employer, it could be family, whatever. What are those red flags they should be looking out for that says that this is a dysfunctional relationship?
Well, coming from me, who has had her fair share of unhealthy relationships, that's basically what was the catalyst, obviously, for this talk, was that I know what I experienced myself. Number one is probably more common than not, sadly. Number two, if people in the age range of our college students can learn from what I've had to walk through, would there be a chance that maybe one of them can spot this sooner, get out of something if they're in it, and help one of their brothers or sisters, if they should ever end up in those situations? I don't want to give it all away because it is a really good talk, so I'm not doing that, but I will give away the biggest chunk of that talk. So the biggest thing is that feeling of this may not be so okay, or I feel as if something's just not right, but I can't put my finger on it, or I can't see it. That feeling of whatever it is, whether it be, you know, if you're in a romantic relationship and something keeps dinging and telling you, oh, they're really cute, or she's really hot, but I don't know, something just wasn't sitting right. The biggest thing is to actually listen to that, because that is something you can't make up, you can't manipulate, you can try to ignore it all you want. By ignoring it, you could easily find yourself in a very compromised situation. And since I had to go through, I didn't have to, but it was just, I guess, part of my life. I went through what I did. I've been able to, and I'm not perfect by any stretch of the word, so I'm not sitting here saying I'm a relationships expert, but I think I'm far more advanced than maybe I should be when it comes to noticing real bad things. Because I've almost walked into a few bad situations since then and went, nope, this isn't right. Although I had to do it for a little while. And it wasn't because I was ill-equipped. It was because the main thing that I was telling you guys just now, which was I was ignoring that thing, that gut feeling, that massive, the biggest red flag of the red flags. I was ignoring it. I was like, oh no, this is going to be okay. And it's like, no, 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 it's not. Just some little tidbits. If somebody reaches out to you only when you're down, and that's when they're the hero in your life, probably not such a great relationship. If somebody only texts you or calls you and it's always to belittle somebody else or to talk about something negative or to constantly be negative, God almighty, probably not the greatest relationship. If somebody that you're in a romantic relationship, I know this is going to sound so silly. I mean, it still sounds a little silly to me to say these days, but it's kind of true. Social media is a lot. So if you're, having to be hidden or be hush hush on social media about this person you're in this relationship with, you might want to check out of that one. I don't want to give the rest away because I could literally talk about this all day long.
Yeah.
But for all of you lucky guys at IUPUI, April 2nd, I'm coming for you. I cannot wait to be there. I'm very excited. And something I'm working into these talks is once I do my speech, I give like a 30-minute allotment afterwards so they can have a one-on-one, like smaller session with me to get some more intimate things out, because it seems like people do open up to me and I love that, but I don't want to make them feel uncomfortable on such a big scale. So that's something else that I worked into that too.
Yeah, I love it. So book Tricia on your campus. You can get the rest of it, and it's an amazing talk. I've heard it, I've seen it, and it looks amazing. So your dog Pink seems to have been through it all with you, and I know how much she means to you. So what makes animals like Pink so important to us as human beings?
Oh man, it's like that dog has been literally homeless with me, and we lived in a truck, and it's just really cool. She never left my side. She's never judged me on how good I looked or didn't look, or how wonderful of a place I did or didn't have her in. And at the end of the day, to just have that companionship is really, really cool. So she's a tried and true old girl, I promise you that. And I think it's really cool because you shared with me when you were in your fraternity at Sigma Pi that you guys had a fraternity dog. Your dog became the house dog. And I was like, why does not every organization have this?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I thought that
Soko
was
had her
very
own
cool.
picture on the composite. So she
I
was
know.
a part of the brotherhood.
I know. That's crazy to me. I loved it.
Very cool. So you know that we love food here at Fraternity Foodie, and I know that you live in Nashville now, but
Sure.
I feel like your foodie obsessions really originate in a wonderful place for amazing food, which is New Orleans. So if we find ourselves in New Orleans, what should we be eating and where should we go to get it?
Oh gosh, how much can I say?
As much as
Okay,
you
so
want.
all right, well here you go. So the best steak in the world is at Doris Metropolitan. Two places that have great food, awesome experiences are Galatoire's and Commander's Palace. The best muffalata that you'll ever get is at a little place in the French Quarter called Central Grocery. And it's there's just so many to name. And of course, everybody will do Cafe du Monde beignets and
Yeah,
their cafe
beignets.
au lait. I get it. But just people are like, wait, what about like New Orleans food? And then I have to throw in the whole Mandinas. Okay, my dad would be like super happy from smiling down from heaven. He loved the turtle soup at Mandina's,
Yes.
and everybody gets a picture in front of the Mandina sign. My sister and I have our picture together, and it's like one of those you have to be a tourist in your own city type of things. But since I've moved to Nashville, I will say the one place that I have freaked out over here is Moss Tacos. Oh my goodness. Look, they only accept cash. It's no credit card, debit card, anything. And it is the best little tacos you've ever had in your life. So
Nice. All right, we're gonna get some Moss tacos tomorrow. We're gonna have to make that happen.
Moss
Um,
Tacos.
Very cool. All right, so for all the people in the audience that want to connect with you on social media, where should they go to connect with you?
They can go to Instagram or LinkedIn or Facebook, Tricia Benitez. Pretty easy to find me. And if you're having any trouble finding me, shoot me an email at Greek University and I will happily connect with you. I'll find yours and connect with you.
Perfect. So that's Tricia at GreekUniversity.org. Tricia, you have been such a good friend to me, and I love all the work that you've done all over the country, really, in helping so many people get into treatment for their addictions. Also, I think your talk on healthy relationships, it's so needed right now on college campuses today. And so I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to be a part of your journey as you spread your amazing messages to college students all over the country. So I just love the fact that I'm on this journey with you, and I can't wait to see where it goes. So thank you. Thank you for being you, and thank you for being such a good friend to me.
Well, I appreciate it all as well. And you two you're all right kind of guy.
Well, thanks.
Look, all I know how to be is me. And you knew that walking into this interview.
I did. All right. Well, thank you so much. And thank you to our audience for joining us. This is episode number 14. So super excited that we keep moving on here. And we look forward to seeing you on an upcoming edition of Fraternity Foodie. Bye for now.